we'd like to call this meeting of the West Dallas West Milwaukee Adult School District to order. Mr. Bailey, would you please rise and lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Suzette, can we do the roll, please?
Mr. Ustra.
Here.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mr. Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Sikic.
Present.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Bailey.
Here.
Ms. Klug.
Here.
Mrs. Justum.
Here.
President Emmons.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Does Superintendent Lexman or any board member have any additions or modifications to tonight's agenda?
I have nothing this evening.
Any board members, Jeff?
I would like to recuse myself from the, when we vote on the supplemental contracts.
Okay, so I think there's at least one other that will be doing that at that time as well. Okay. Do we have any public comments noted for tonight? You said there were none that were reported? No, there were not, okay. Okay, great.
I just have a real quick question.
Sure.
That was Heather Justum that accused herself from the board?
But we'll do it when we get to supplemental contracts
Just
officially.
asking, because I wasn't sure.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
All right, then we'll begin with item number 7, the superintendent's report.
Okay, I think this will be relatively quick this evening. There's not a legislative update. There is a item later in the agenda related to proposed funding. So part of the DPI proposed budget going into the biennial budget, but that'll come up as a separate item a little later on. That's kind of the latest. There are no congratulatory resolutions, which is not unusual in the summer. So 7.3, some updates and information items. First, in response to public comment from our July 23rd meeting, we had one parent that spoke at that meeting in support of the transgender policy. And she's also expressed interest in supporting the implementation, and we've had some initial email and reaching out to some of the organizations in southeastern Wisconsin, even Madison, that do that kind of training and development work with schools. So that's progressing little by little. We've recently, and I've shared this with the board in Friday notes, but I think it's worth it in the public process too, a larger focus now in our strategic plan and working with Studer on performance management and developing processes that help us ensure that we have consistent conversations about increasing performance. And there's 2 data points, as I've shared and talked with principals about, is that last year we distributed $1.2 million in performance compensation. But essentially our performance is flat. We're not going backwards, but in terms of the aggressive goals we set in the strategic plan, we've got to inspire performance and manage performance a little bit differently. And so this will turn into more coaching in classrooms, more direct engagement by principals in classrooms. Because, again, as I've said before, the strategic plan has set some really aggressive targets, but we don't need to reach the targets for us. We need to reach the targets for kids. And increasing expectations is part of the formula of how you get that work done. And then a note of interest. So after, and I've again shared this with the board and talked about it last time, as we did our Deeper Learning Live with the leadership team all downtown. It was just an amazing, inspiring, energizing day. And a number of schools now are replicating that. So when they have staff back, they're going to do similar things. Some are using exactly kind of what we did, but on a smaller scale in downtown Milwaukee. Some schools are going to do kind of an exploration in teams of their neighborhood. So, who lives here? Who comes to our school? And I think it's fascinating because a lot of it is really about team building, right? So that connection and community building. But also, there's some learning that happens that way that I think will be powerful for us. I'm both nervous about this, but I have all kinds of people out doing the same thing because, public bikes and workers' comp and all that stuff. But those are risks that are worth taking if you get better results from it. And then finally, just a note, apologize to everybody that our elevators are down. As all of you are aware. And that happened about 2 o'clock this afternoon. We requested an emergency work order repair, and I don't know what emergency means, but it doesn't quite meet our needs. But I just wanted to publicly apologize if anybody came to the meeting and turned away because they, couldn't get up the stairs. It's 5 flights of stairs. We did, 6, that's right, sorry, 6 flights of stairs. We did have Mike Weaver down in front, just in case somebody came that wanted to make public comments this evening, and then we would have, dialed them in to the meeting, just so we would have that on record, but apparently no one showed up to make any comments. But again, I just wanted that out there for the public. And that concludes my report.
Item number 8, Board President's Report. We'll review the board calendar. Today is Monday, August 13th. Today we have a regular Board of Education meeting. Following that meeting, we have 2 workshops, business services. One is on health insurance, and the other is the proposed 18-19 budget and preliminary tax levy number 3. Our next meeting is Monday, August 27th at 6 p.m., and that's a regular Board of Education meeting. Then the next meeting will be Monday, September 10th at 6 p.m., a regular Board of Education meeting, and a learning and technology workshop on achievement gap reduction. Following that, on Monday, September 17th, again at 6 p.m., we will have our public budget hearing for the 2018-2019 district budget. Do any board members have any public events or any other comments to add? Heather?
This coming Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 7 p.m. is Lion King Jr., put on by the West Dallas Children's Theater, which is kids from our grade schools, elementary, intermediate, high school. It's a great production. I'm very excited to see it. The costumes, they model them after the Broadway shows. They're like fantastic. And then Buffalo Wild Wings dine out for the West Dallas Wave Girls Swim Team starting the 15th through September 5th. All you have to say is you're there for Team B.
Anybody else have any public events? Gary?
I just want to make a comment. I attended the 2018 Camp Champions event, and I just wanted to give a congratulations to everyone that worked at that event and put it on. You can tell they worked hard, and they were very proud of what they did. It was a very fun event to attend.
Great. And just as a side note for the out and about for the Wave Swim team, with school starting in the next couple of weeks, many of the schools and the PTAs have started out their out and abouts again. And if you're looking for a place to dine out over the next couple weeks and months, you can probably check any of the schools' PTA pages or any of the centralized spots, and you'll be able to find a good place to eat and support one of our schools. So just about every night coming up in the next couple weeks for sure, and into September and beyond, you're going to find a fundraiser benefiting one of our schools. So
Just an event announcement. This Friday night is the West Milwaukee National Night Out at the held at the West Milwaukee Intermediate School. Don't have to be a West Milwaukee resident to attend. It's a fun event.
All right, thank you. All right, then we will move on to item number 9, our consent agenda. Item number 9.1 is the approval of minutes from the July 23rd, 2018 regular board meeting. Item 9.2 is the employment summary, and item 9.3 are the supplementary contracts. Anyone need any of those separated? Jeff?
9.3.
All right, we will put supplementary contracts into its own item. Then we would be looking for a motion on items 9.1 and 9.2.
Move to approve. Second.
All right, been moved and approved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All right, Dennis?
Just have a quick comment.
Yeah.
I was not here, so I'm abstaining in regards to just that.
Because of the minutes?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have 1 abstention. Any additional comments or questions on items 9.1 or 9.2? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then we have item 9.3, the supplementary contracts. We're looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, it's been moved to approve. Any comments or questions? And then how many abstentions? 2 abstentions? Okay, we've got 2 abstentions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. All right, then we'll move on to our action items. Item 10.1, open enrollment seats for 2018-2019. Mr. Weaver, Mr. Borland.
All right. So one of the policies we have in place, obviously, is the open enrollment policy, and in that policy, it does state that we can revisit, potentially open up more seats if that can be allowed, or if we have the opportunity to do so. So after reviewing our enrollment, I'll let Jeff talk a little bit about that, but we believe that we can open up a few more seats to hopefully allow some more students into our wonderful school district.
So in January, you approved 128 seats to bring in on open enrollment. That was based on the number of sections, class sections we had, teachers we had, and what we projected to be our enrollment. As we get closer to the first day of school, the projections, you get a better idea of just how close you were going to be to the projections and things like that. So just describing the process, where we currently are, we collected all of our applications for this new year. We conducted the lottery. We prioritized based on the lottery who would be assigned what seats at which schools. We notified the families. We sent out letters and communications, made telephone contacts with families, trying to get them to come in to claim the seats and enroll in our district. To date, we have 81 new open enrollment students who have enrolled, and because we approve seats at a grade level, and applicants, have kids that they want to attend and make application, because they don't always match. Like classes or grade levels where we have a large number of seats didn't necessarily get a large number of applications. Others, they matched fine. So because we had a large number of seats in some grade levels and a few applications in those grade levels, we'll never get 128 seats filled. So in just kind of reviewing where we currently are, and that means sections, class sections, and how many students are currently enrolled, and then trying to project out 3 weeks instead of 8 months, where we probably would end up, we were able to kind of go through and find a reasonable number of open enrollment seats that we could take in above the 128 at particular grade levels that we did in January. We could probably take in 31 more and not have to fill up seats basically that are already there. I mean, that's the idea of the program. We have seats, they're likely to go unfilled. Why not bring in some people that would like to fill those seats and not force the staff, but educate kids from other communities that want to be educated with us. So that's why we're making the recommendation to bring in 31 more seats. At on your agenda, there was a chart that indicated just at what grade levels we'd like to see those, and hopefully we can get those filled.
So, one last thing, and it's in the executive summary, but I think it bears repeating, is that adding seats doesn't necessarily mean we're adding more open enrollment students, right? What we're trying to do is create the opportunity to try to meet the projection we set in the budget for open enrollment students, because that is a dollar impact, and without opening additional seats, we're probably going to have to adjust the budget in the wrong direction. Based on kind of where we currently are. So I think that is important, that we're just trying to really carefully manage the seats and the dollars that go with them.
I don't see a breakdown here of what schools these students are going to go to. So one thing that we tried to do with the neighborhood schools is to balance our open enrollment numbers across the schools. I understand that's not going to be perfect, because it depends on where people are living as far as what schools have seats available to them. But I know you can't rattle off how many kids are probably need school right now, but I think it's something to be interesting to see for myself as a board member, is kind of the percentage of open enrollment across the entire district that we're looking at, and seeing how that has changed over time, and specifically where these 31 students, I presume because there's all these seats are opening, have people waiting, so they're presuming they would be filled, would be ending up.
We could, because when we get to December and we're looking at enrollment, we could add on to that particular workshop, the history of where we've come, or where we've been to where we're going, and provide the exact amount of seats at that point in time.
That'd be fine.
Yeah.
And currently, the end-of-year scorecard or report card has demographics for each school, and percent of open enrollment is included there as well.
And I did determine, to figure out how many seats and at what schools.
Yep.
Basically, I did look at the sections, and I do have a distribution. I guess I didn't produce it to chart like the one you had at the grade level, so I didn't know that was necessary, but I can get you that information if you'd like.
I just think with the push that was made to try to balance open enrollment, it's an important thing to keep note of, to ensure that we're not steering away from that unintentionally, of course, but, you know, if we are starting to see a large disparity between schools, we should maybe try to think of some strategies to aggregate that before it becomes an issue again.
Trending, right, which directions we're trending, right? Are we making progress on the decisions that we made as part of the strategic plan?
Mhm.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, very good, Noah.
So the highlighted chart that's at the bottom here, it actually has 129 approved seats compared with the information that is above. And one of the other changes that I noticed, which is not the same, is that 11th grade has at the bottom 2 approved seats, whereas the just above that, according to what we approved on the 22nd, said 0. I think there's 1 or 2 other minor things as well, but the numbers don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 128 were on the original sheet, the January one, and 2 additional seats in that 11th grade would bring it up to 31. You're right, initially we approved 0 in 11th grade. I put the 2 in the wrong column. Apologize.
How quickly would you notify families, seeing as a lot of those forms and fees are this week?
Yeah,
We wouldn't
tomorrow.
want those kids to miss that opportunity?
Yeah,
Okay,
we'd send a letter out tomorrow and make phone calls tomorrow.
okay. So we wouldn't just send a letter, because
Yeah.
probably not gonna get their word, also call them. Okay.
Thank you. So based upon calling these people tomorrow, you'll have a guesstimate as to who is going to be enrolled or not be enrolled, or where are you going with it as far as? I mean, you're gonna say to these, okay, it's been approved, are you coming into our district? So will you know that tomorrow, or?
Well, they have to come, they actually, I mean, we'll call them, we'll write a letter, and then call them tomorrow and say, we're sending out a letter. If you'd like to accept this seat, you need to come into the enrollment center and bring, you know, the proper documentation, birth certificate and whatnot, and enroll with us, and that's how you claim the seat. Now, we'll probably give them a fairly short amount of time to do it, maybe a week or so, because the list, it's not like I've got just 31 kids waiting. I've got a list of kids waiting, and so if you're not gonna take it, I wanna move down the waiting list and, you know, keep offering until we get this filled up. You know, it seems that about only half the kids who initially apply actually take these seats.
I just want to make sure that the work that you've done in regards to over the past few years, that people will come back on you and say, oh, I didn't hear about this, I didn't see it, I wasn't home, and then it starts all over again. So it's just a matter of, I hope that people are listening, that if you want to be in our school district, please contact Mr. Borland.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, we'd be looking for a
Move
motion.
to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and approved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. Action item 10.2, the revised strategic plan for 2016 to 2021. Dr. Buckner?
Thank you. So we worked on this in workshop with the board, this and the next item. And so we're bringing it back around now for consideration and hopefully approval. And again, what we've done are 2 things in this, is that we've, in learning over the last 2 years, recognized that some of the things that are really college and career readiness targets and indicators we had over in service to our stakeholders and communities, such as attendance and discipline items. So getting internal alignment and coherence in the plan. And then also the fact that we're introducing and now expecting the deeper learning competencies and using that framework as a way to really move forward with the strategic plan to get internal language aligned to the deeper learning framework and the competencies. So those are the 2 big changes. What we've done most recently with this is we did introduce the proposed changes to the leadership team and had a conversation there. And generally, it made a lot of sense for the leaders to go, okay, so we understand the focus, the language is the same, and things that line up to college and career readiness make more sense this way. And then under the service to our stakeholders and community, then we added some new targets there that better align to the work in that area, more specifically the parent satisfaction survey, the percent of students that are, residents that are enrolled with the district, some of those metrics that better align to that building block.
Anybody else? Any comments or questions?
Just
Nope.
one kind of comment. I mean, there's a couple instances where in our goals, we didn't meet them for whatever reason. And when we created new goals, we kind of adjusted the goal we were going for based on what we were from the year prior. And it was lower than where our original goal was. And I wasn't sure if that was a good way. To me, that's moving the goalpost as far as what we're trying to get. And it isn't a major change, but I just think that kind of keeping what our original goal was as far as our percentage of gain, just because we don't get it, doesn't mean we should give up on it.
So give me an example.
I was trying to find one
Right.
here as I went through. I had seen one when I was looking at this initially, and I thought it was a little bit odd. You can go on to other comments if there's other people have it. I'm trying to find
No,
this
no
one.
reason. Does anybody else have any other questions? Dan?
I would just ask that in the future, and I know we pay student education for looking over these things, I would ask in the future that they be a little bit more diligent in regards to the goals that Noah had mentioned and updating us instead of us updating them. Thank you.
I'm not saying I'm not gonna pass this with this, but I think this is, that's fine. I will go through it, and I will email you my example,
Absolutely.
Dr. Lexman.
Yeah, no, I'd appreciate that.
I just saw something where it was lower than it was initially. It was like 90.6, and before it was 91%. That sticks in my mind. It was 91% is the goal, and the new, I think we were at 88%, and so the new goal was 90.6% that we got it to.
Oh, okay, now I know exactly which one it is. So it's the percent of resident families that enroll in the school district.
So, you know, I don't know why we lowered it, what the decision-making beyond it is or strategy.
So I don't know if that is in this one or if it's in the next item.
Yeah, I
Nice
think it's
to
in
meet
the
you.
annual.
I think it's in the annual targets.
Yeah.
And so, right.
Oh,
and
I
that-
apologize.
No,
But
that's
that's
right.
good that you identify it now, because then we can be looking for it when we
Yep.
get to that.
That's why I couldn't find it. It makes sense.
It is,
Right.
it's the
Being
next one.
proactive.
There's percentages in here, too.
So are there any other comments or questions on item
also the
10.2, the
four-year
revised strategic plan?
Yeah, I did have one. Under financial stability and efficiency, we established a long-range facilities planning committee to develop a 20-year facility master plan. You know, we had a planning committee, and it, I think, just kind of hasn't gone or met recently. Is there a target date to bring that back?
Mr. Weaver.
Question. So we did receive, we received the information from Kraus Anderson, that's the firm that we've been working with regarding the Central High School and what to do, like what are the options if we do X, Y, or Z, and what's the cost. Last we left it via email was with Steve Brody. They gave us their projection on cost. He went back and went through and made suggestions where it didn't make sense. We sent it back to Kraus Anderson to take a look at it again with those points in mind. One point was like the cost of an auditorium didn't jive with what we thought it would be. So those types of little points are being looked at. Once we get that document back, our hope is to bring back the committee, invite new people if they're interested, obviously, and then get that process rolling. That information is what's going to guide our next steps.
Could we see those prior to when they keep going back and forth in regards to what's happening, so the board has an update on what's going on?
Absolutely. So I'll send you the last one we received, but it's incorrect with dollar amounts. But at least you'll get an idea of where
Yeah.
it's falling. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
And do we have any ETA on when we're gonna get that back? Because I feel like we've kind of lost a year in the process here, and I know some of that was due to unforeseen circumstances, but I would hope that we can get things going and then the ball really rolling again.
It usually takes them 2 to 3 weeks to get back to us, but I can tell them to expedite it as fast as they can, absolutely. But I'll get you that document, Dan, but again, it will be a little outdated.
Oh, understandable. Thank you.
Anything else on item 10.2? And now we'll be looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, been moved and approved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Item 10.3, Board Policy 111, School District Goals for 2018-2019. Dr. Levy.
Yeah, so each year under the strategic plan for the last 2 years, we've set annual targets that are aligned to the larger goals and targets set in the 2016 to 2021 plan. And so you have those in front of you, and because this is embedded in board policy, we bring this back around as a policy review and approval. But again, some of the changes here align to what you just approved in the previous item, and also some adjustments to where we are. So the item, Noah, that you brought up in the last conversation, the reason that's been adjusted for the annual target is because keeping it where it was would be unrealistic. And so that was part of the, some of our conversation when we talked about the aggressive goals, especially the academic goals, but the annual targets, to try to make them, everybody's familiar with SMART goals, right? So it was actually attainable. So that's really the thinking behind that particular one, and then everything else is adjusted, and I believe everything now has baseline and a target, which is the first time we've managed to get all of those things kind of locked in for the year.
Any comments and questions?
Thank you.
That's not a comment, though.
For the 2021 targets, the bulleted items, the fourth bulleted items, where it's students enroll in 1,200 advanced placement courses and 65% score 3 or better. I assume that's the advanced placement tests.
Correct.
Just wondering if it might be better to separate that into separate bullet items so we know it's the advanced placement test.
It certainly could be. However, you just approved it in the last item, so now we'd have to do that one again.
Oh, I missed it in the last item. I just saw it in this one.
Yeah, these are the 2021 targets, so that's embedded in that other document. I think generally, it's understood that that is the advanced placement test.
Right.
Because that's kind of the language we use, the score of 3 or better, which is kind of where most universities then grant college credit at 3. Not all, some want you to have a 4 or even a 5, but that's kind of the standard for most.
Marty, do you think there'll be any comments or concerns from parents out there in regards to something like this, instead of using the advanced placement courses, baseline versus advanced placement tests? You don't think there'll be any questioning from district people?
There hasn't been at this point.
Okay.
That one has not gathered the kind of attention that 80% of the kids at the 61st percentile has. That one definitely gets teachers' attention because that's a big goal to try to do in 5 years. But this one has not raised conversation that I'm aware of.
We're not that far off of it either.
No. We've added some advanced placement courses, and that then contributes to expanding it.
I was just wondering, with what Gary said, I'm just wondering how much time it would take to just go ahead and change that or put that in there.
I view them as 2 separate goals.
Any other comments or questions on the goals?
So the 4-year goal of graduation is a baseline of 93.8%, but that's based off 216?
Correct.
Okay. Because our current goal is lower than our original goal.
Right, and some of this is also that graduation rate now is, it used to be a point-in-time calculation, and now it's more fluid in WISE-Dash. And so we've been trying to keep up with, as kids finish summer school, some of those kind of things, so it's had a little bit of ebb and flow. And I should have jumped on and looked at it today, where we are, as summer school starts to wrap up. But we want to increase graduation rate. That's really the commitment.
It just can be confusing sometimes if
Mhm.
someone's looking at, well, what do you mean the baseline was this if your current goal is less than the baseline? For
Right.
the average person, it's gonna be a bit confusing, like, oh, that's the 2016 baseline, we've actually decreased
Right.
since then, and now we're
Right.
trying to get back up.
Right, so the annual target
Yep.
is less than the 5-year target, yep.
Anything else?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, been moved and approved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. On to action item 10.4, Board Policy Exhibit 261, Parent 1, WAWM School District Organizational Structure. Dr. Lexman.
So this is an annual item, as things change in the district and people come in and out. So a couple things that are new in this year, we've put back in the Director of Human Resources, so we're really happy to welcome Mr. Thompson here tonight. And he was approved in the employment summary as our Director of Human Resources, so that's an area that now is lined up again, and we're able to kind of move forward with some of the big projects that we've been kind of holding on in that area. And then some of the other changes are names, but then also on the other side, on the back side of this, where we've new job descriptions, new titles for coaches. So inquiry coaches and deeper learning coaches. And I talked about the performance management conversation and more coaching going on, and that's also language that lines up organizationally in the organizational structure to the strategic plan, right? So we're working hard on this kind of internal coherence around what we're asking people to do and the targets we're asking them to hit, and trying to use the same language in those descriptions and conversations. And so again, it's an annual item, and it comes around about this time each year.
Dan?
I have a question on the assistant principal at the Frank Lloyd Wright, to be determined. How far along are we with that process?
So we did first round interviews for the principal position today. We interviewed some really interesting talent, and there's a bit of a shift right now in some of our positions where we're attracting some really interesting people, some of whom we very much would love to hire, maybe not quite for this job, but we're getting this list now of people that are interested in coming here. So that's been a big part of the conversation. We're working to schedule the second round interviews, which are at the school level, with the applicants that will move forward. We're aiming at Thursday for that. And so that we should have a recommendation around the principalship as early as Friday or early next week. And then it'll get a little bit ahead of the board, because the board won't meet for 2 weeks, but whoever's the recommended, we're gonna ask them then to start leading right away the hiring of the assistant principal.
Do you feel at this point that the money situation as far as payment to the principals is going to be a stumbling block?
It hasn't seemed to be in the last hire, which was Horace Mann. And so I think right now where that particular position is, given the size of the school, and it is a salary that's more than the other intermediate schools because of that difference. So I think we're okay with that particular position of what we have, how we have it budgeted.
Have there been any internal candidates?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions on item 10.4?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, been moved and approved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that moves on. Item 10.5, a resolution to support an increase to special education funding. Dr. Lux.
So this was a resolution that was drafted by SWSA. So SWSA is Southeast Wisconsin Schools Alliance, which is we're a member of it, and it serves as kind of a lobbying, organizing group on behalf of school districts in southeastern Wisconsin. One of the things that Tony Evers, the superintendent of public instruction, has proposed in the biennial budget is to significantly increase funding for special education. And it really is to try to fulfill the commitment that was made a long time ago. We're currently at about 26% reimbursement, and this would move us to 60, I think, if I'm...
Yes.
Yeah, if I remember this correctly. And then there's a significant shift for us. We have calculated kind of roughly what that would mean for West Dallas, West Milwaukee. And so this is an opportunity for us essentially to communicate to the governor, to our legislators, that we support this. And so SWSA has asked us to have a conversation with our boards to see if boards would chime in on supporting this particular part of the education budget through a resolution. I don't know if you want to add anything, Deidre?
No, sums it up.
Okay.
Questions?
Go ahead, no.
This is 90, not 60.
Yeah.
It's in the, like, the second or third paragraph.
So that says that there's statutory language.
There's
sorry.
60 million in 2000 fiscal
Right.
year.
Right, so the statutory language is 60. He was proposing to increase it by 60%, bringing it to 90, or
90,
close to that, right?
Because it's 90% for the private schools.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. No, that's good. That's good clarification. Thank you.
Dan, did you have a question too?
Oh, I did. You know, it's, believe me, it's not that I'm against special education, because our daughter Heidi is a special education teacher, and we also have had some special education children in our family. I think at this point in time, though, I just have to take a look back and say, what is our goal as a board in regards to either signing or, you know, saying, yes, go ahead with this? I'm a little curious as to that. Again, don't take me wrong, but I agree with special education wholeheartedly. I do work for special ed kids. But I just think at this point in time, with everything going on from a political standpoint, I'm not so sure this is the right time to take a look at that and sign our names to it. So, thank you.
And just a point of clarification is
Sure.
that the funding and that additional funding may not change much of how we spend that money or where we add. You know, we're not saying, oh, we're gonna take this money and add a bunch of services or shift a bunch of additional services into that. This is just, that money right now comes out of the same pot of money we're given for all students. And so the state superintendent is just encouraging the legislature to consider a higher amount to support those students, which would free up some dollars for some of our other
Right,
programs.
and you said it quite nicely, the legislator.
Yes.
Okay, that area. I don't think he's coming to us unless I have not seen the letter, that as a West House, West Milwaukee board member, will you do this or can you do this? So I'm not sure that, I just look at it from my standpoint. I try to judge things on a nonpartisan type situation, bipartisan. So, thank you.
I kind of look at it as equaling. With that last statement down there, further it is believed that Wisconsin public school children are worth reimbursement equal to that of private schools. That
I think it's
nails it for me.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's good to have a couple nails in those shingles, but I just look at it saying that in the near future, and Marty has talked about this before to us, that the voucher schools are going to be rising more and more. Again, I'm not against. I'm just giving you the way I feel. That's all.
Any additional comments or questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and approved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes action items for this evening. Item number 11 are board member suggestions for future agenda items. Do we want to review the last one that we updated, or is that ready? So we can review the ones that were.
Right, it's not ready.
Okay. We have gone through the most recent list and looked through what's already been covered and what's been consolidated and things like that. So for the next meeting, we'll have kind of an updated list of what we're going to tackle. But anything that hasn't already made the list of future agenda items. And you can always email them to me. I'd be happy to filter through them if you think of them in the middle of the night. So, all right. So at that moment, we will, that concludes the regular meeting portion. I will take a quick 5-minute break and then get ready for our 2 workshops. We are at recess.